It's a beautiful morning in Bogota, Colombia. I have to meet my friend for breakfast at 8:30, but I know that will actually be for 9 this morning. I meet with my friend and we're about to order some breakfast. I'm looking forward to some nice bread and cheese, or maybe some pancakes, but she suggests that I order some changua. For anyone who is unfamiliar with changua, it's a nice hot liquid with milk and egg. Who drinks egg and milk? Unbelievable, but Colombians do it. I probably order the caldo. I said I think that's the best option right now, even though I think it's a little early to be drinking soup. She said, that's a good option, but maybe you should try some cheese with your hot chocolate that you're going to order. Only in Colombia would I put cheese in my chocolate instead of on my bread or my biscuits. Apparently it tastes much better. We finish our breakfast and my friend asks for the bill. She's like, "Me regalas la cuenta, por favor?" Now, at university, I learned that me regalas is the equivalent of saying, "Would you please give to me as a gift?" Why would I say me regalas? But in Colombia, it's understandable. We're on our way out, and she shows me with her nose that some fellow companions are in the building. We go to greet them, and we have a small talk, and then we make our farewells. But I almost forgot to give them a hug and a kiss. You shouldn't forget that in Colombia, or they'll think that you're not being very friendly with them on that date. I decided to take a bus to the office. And not just any bus, but the colectivo. The colectivo is always a joy or a jolly ride for me. There's someone who comes on the bus who always probably wants to sell a service or a product. I call it selling a service. But what they do is probably come and play their guitar for music, or maybe sing a song for music, or tell a joke for music. I find it very relaxing. What I don't find relaxing is when we stop at the street lights and there's a lot of smoke. But while we're at the street light, it gives me time to observe how diverse this country is. At the same street light, you will find a donkey cart and a donkey, as well as a BMW, as well as an old model of a bus or an old modeled car. It also gives me time to think of other cultural differences or cultural peculiarities that some may find shocking. If you ever travel to foreign lands, you've heard of the term culture shock. It's used to describe the feeling one gets when they experience a culture that is very different from their own. Expats or expatriates often talk about going through the stages of culture shock. These stages include the honeymoon phase, the irritation to anger stage, the rejection of the culture stage, and the cultural adjustment stage. My honeymoon phase lasted very long because I fell in love with Colombia before arriving. Due to the fact that I got an excellent feeling from its vibrant music that I heard on my radio whilst living in Barbados. I too have experienced the other phases. I'm a very open-minded person, but I've still had many feelings aroused or thoughts stimulated from various moments in Colombia. It mainly happens when you're not familiar with social cues. Several friends from other countries who live in Colombia have expressed similar sentiments of surprise or uncertainty for handling certain situations that I came up with on the bus. One such situation, or the first I should say, is public affection, which is shown by young people and adults. Colombians are very loving people and they love to hold their hands while walking on the street or walking in a building, or basically it's public affection. And this public affection ranges from touching to almost making out on the streets. Salon visits are also a very interesting trip for me. Whenever I go to a salon, it amuses me that both sexes equally do the same services. You can find a guy comfortably sitting in front of a lady getting a manicure and a pedicure. Another thing that makes me smile in Colombia is the formalities. You will get like 6 questions at one time. Hi, how are you? How's your family? How's it going? What's up? Another thing that surprises you is that when Colombians say ¿Qué más?, which means what else or what's up, they can say that after you've already told them something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to respond with more information. Colombians also surprise me whenever we go drinking. The flow of the drinks is amazing, but one shocking thing is when they take their guaro or aguardiente and they throw it on the ground before they begin drinking from the bottle. Apparently, the guaro that is thrown on the ground is for the dead spirits, or in commemoration of those spirits. On the topic of food, Colombians also surprise people with the taste of their food. Colombia has several dishes, which are all very tasty, but surprisingly for a Latin American country, it doesn't use many spices or seasonings. This is one thing that really alarms many Caribbean colleagues, as we use a lot of spices or pepper in our food. Well, I'm about to get off the bus and I need to cross the road. The light for the pedestrians says green. However, pedestrians do not get the right of way. Cars pass while I'm about to cross. I slowly walk and I proceed to make my way to where I'm going. I'm about to get a nice bottle of juice, but maybe instead I'll order some fresh juice. Whilst entering a restaurant, I see that next to me a young lady enters the restaurant with her dog. That's another surprising thing. That would never happen in my country. Well, here are my final thoughts about culture shock. Culture shock can be experienced on different levels. There's a breakthrough level where you are now understanding that new culture and understanding that there are different ways of life. And there's a higher level of understanding in which you could completely lose your identity and yourself and perhaps grow new skin. Either way, it's the point when you come to the realization that something has changed within. How long does culture shock last? It totally depends on the person. It depends on your attitudes, and it depends on your thoughts to adjusting. You have to remember the reason you went to the foreign country or the foreign place in the first place. My advice is, whenever you travel, expect the unexpected. Thanks.
Que parecen dos, que parecen cuatro, mira, te juro por Dios.